Yo, what's going on, boys? How you guys doing today? Welcome back to the next video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at a build that I've been falling in love lately with. And it's a little bit out there, but trust me, it's very effective in GMs. It's just a very different playstyle. This build uses the Manticore and Ascension to pretty much just float about the enemies with a ton of damage systems, over shields, and just crazy survivability. You would think that being up in the air would make it so, you die faster. But this build actually kind of proves that wrong, because just take a look at this. You could be in the middle of a bunch of enemies and you still won't die as long as you're floating up in the air with the Manticore. We're also going to be jolting tons of enemies with our exotic armor and also our Ascension. So not only are we going to be able to stay alive, but we're also going to be doing lots of that clear and just kind of hitting everything with jolt. So let's get into it, and the main things that we're going to need for this build is going to be the Manticore SMG with the catalyst. We are getting the catalyst done for this, so you guys don't have the catalyst done, a quick sure sheet checkpoint will get that done for you. And for the armor, we're going to want the Gifted Conviction exotic armor piece, the new piece of armor that came with the final shape. As long as you have those two, this build will work and you'll be able to become the helicopter you always dreamed of as a new hunter. So let's get into it, and first let's take a look at some of the weapons we're running. Now starting off with the Manticore of the build. This is going to be the main weapon, this is going to be the weapon that we're going to use the most, and it's pretty much like the only required weapon for this build. Your other weapon can be anything that you want, as long as you have the Manticore. This build is going to work, because this is going to be the weapon that we use most of the time. It's basically just going to let us stay in the air for a lot of time, and actually become a helicopter. The Ascension is just like the takeoff, but this is what keeps us up in the air. And the way it does that is with this exotic perk. Whenever we damage something while we're on the ground, it builds up our anti-gravity repulsor meter, and the next time we jump up in the air and do some damage, it will just kind of hold us there. It will just keep us airborne, basically until our meter runs out. And we can actually extend the meter by just doing damage to an enemy. The meter while you're on the ground also builds up really fast, so you only have to really shoot a little bit before you can take off in the air again. Now when we're up in the air, we get a bunch of other bonuses that make this weapon amazing. First, we get 40% increased damage, which is quite a big damage boost. There's not many damage boosts in PvE that are just 40%. And also the catalyst for the weapon will make it so whenever we get some final blows with the weapon, or we do sustained damage with the weapon, we're going to get free void over shields. And you get a lot, and I really do mean a lot of over shields, especially when you're shooting a bigger target, like a major or a champion. You get a ton of over shields, and that also is going to reduce the damage that we take. And on top of all of that, it's also going to reduce combatant accuracy, meaning that we get hit a lot less when we're in the air, and it's also going to return ammo to the magazine, so we don't really have to reload as often. So the Manticore's got a lot of different things going on, but the main thing you want to worry about is definitely just the meter. Make sure that you keep an eye out on your meter for whenever it runs out or is close to running out, so you can go invisible and take some cover, fill it up again, and then take flight like the helicopter you are again. For the GM this week, I was running a Riptide for the overload, some Maypets because rockets do more damage, but like I said, you could go with anything on the other two slots. The only weapon that really matters is the Manticore. Now for the super on this build, there's nothing really specific that you want to go with, but I was definitely using tether, and it worked very well in both this GM and last week's GM. You tether a bunch of stuff, you jolt them, and basically you just go to town with your SMG, and it's also going to be making you invisible quite a lot, since anytime you kill something with a tether, you'll go invisible. Now for our melee and our grenade, we're going to have the Arc Bolt plus the Withering Blade. The Withering Blade is going to be really good for slowing targets, and every time we slow something and kill it, it'll make us invisible. It's also going to be really good for dealing with those overloads. So if we got a stun overload, we can just quickly stun it with the Withering Blade. Now we have the Arc Bolt Grenade, since it's going to be able to jolt things, and it's going to give us damage resistance whenever we jolt something. So this is going to add more survivability, as well as being able to jolt things and stun overloads. So there's quite a few things that are both grenade here, but it's mostly going to be to get some of that damage resistance on top of all the other damage resistance we're going to have. Now for the aspects, we're going to have Stylist Executioner plus Ascension. Now Stylist Executioner is going to be for adding a bit more safety to the build. Whenever we kill something that's affected by jolt or by slow, we're basically going to go invisible. And it's most of the time going to be jolt. Our grenade's going to apply jolt, Our Ascension is going to be applying Jolt, and we're going to be spamming our Ascension a lot. So it's always going to be something jolted that if we kill it, we go invisible. And this is basically going to be like our backup plan or our exit strategy, depending on what we're using it for. If our meteor is getting low, you go invisible, you go behind cover, build up our meteor again, and then take flight again as the helicopter we are. So yeah, it's just going to add a little more survivability, more safety to the build by being able to just disappear and just reappear again whenever we want to. Now our second aspect is going to be Ascension, and it's basically going to be the way that we take off. It's also going to be a way for us to constantly jolt things, constantly get damage reduction, and it's going to be a crazy amount of damage reduction, because not only are we going to be using Galvanic Armor to give us that 30% damage reduction, but paired up with our Exotic, we're going to gain even more damage reduction on top of it, as well as jolting things in an even bigger area. So we're going to be jolting a lot, and always having some of that damage reduction. You basically want to spam your Ascension just as quickly as you can. Even if you're still in the air, just flying with the Manticore, you set the Ascension again, it's going to re-jolt everything, and it's also going to re-up the cooldown on all that damage reduction that you have. So you definitely want to be spamming Ascension just as quickly as you can. Next up, let's move on to the fragments. The first one we're going to have is probably one of the most important ones, and it's going to be Facet of Hope. This fragment just by itself right here will make it so we can have 100% uptime on our Amplified, and just so we can spam our Ascension just more often. We'll never be without Amplified as long as we have Facet of Hope. Next up, we have Facet of Dominance, and this is basically what allows our Arc Grenade to jolt things, giving us the damage reduction, being able to stun those overload champions, and also use Applied Jolt to anything that hits. After that, we're going to have Facet of Balance. Whenever we do some damage with Light or Darkness Energy, we're going to get back Melee or Grenade Energy. And this is going to be so we can get our abilities back a little faster, our Grenade, our Melees, just so we can spam them a lot more often. Next, we're going to have Facet of Protection. Whenever we're surrounded, we're going to get some more damage resistance. It's 15% at base, and while in Transcendence is 25%. This is great because we're basically always going to be surrounded, we're always going to be in the middle of enemies, so we're always going to be taking advantage of Facet of Protection. Because that's a bit more extra damage resistance on top of all the damage resistance we have, just so we can tank more damage. And lastly, we're going to have the Facet of Solitude. Whenever we land some rapid precision hits, it emits a Severing Blast, and anything that gets hit by that blast is going to be severed, and once they're severed, they're going to be doing 40% less damage. This fragment is basically going to make the big enemies in the GM, the champions, the bosses, the mini bosses, just a little bit easier to deal with since they're not going to be doing as much damage. Now for our chest piece, Gift of Conviction. Whenever we activate our Ascension and jolt things, we're going to give even more damage resistance on top of it. It also throws bouncing explosives like all around us whenever we activate our Ascension, and they kind of reach a little farther than our normal Ascension like jolting range, so you're going to be jolting even in a bigger area. And to get the damage resistance, you don't really have to use Jolt with your Ascension. Our Grenade jolting things also will give us damage resistance. That's why we have that on. So now let's take a look at the mods that were running on this build, and we're going to go through these really quickly. First, for the helmet here, we have Harmonic Siphon, so we can make some orbs with a Manticore. We have Radiant Light, so we can give armor charge to our teammates. And lastly, we have Heavy Ammo Finder, so we can spam our heavy. Now for our gauntlets, we're going to have Harmonic Loader, Momentum Transfer, and Bowstring Detonation, so we can get back our class ability and our grenade faster, as well as reload our Manticore faster. Now for the chest piece is where we're going to have our resiliences, and this was going to change depending on the GM. So just take a look at the threat, or a lot of damage that's being done in the GM, and go with that. For the boots, we have Absolution, Orbs of Restoration, and Recuperation, so whenever we pick up orbs, we get a bunch of ability energy back, and we also heal. And lastly, for the class item, we have Proximity Ward, so we get an overshield whenever we do a finisher, and double utility kickstart. So whenever we use our class ability and we have an armor charge, it'll turn that into class ability energy again, so we can spam our Ascension some more. We're already going to have a pretty big uptime on Ascension, but once we get some armor charge, we're going to be able to spam it even more. Which is, it's pretty great, you know, that's like the main thing we want to do. We're going to spam Ascension as much as we can. Some more of this is good. And also, a lot of these mods don't work with Ascension, so we're really stuck to pretty much utility kickstart only. Now for our artifact mods, you want to have Elemental Siphon, Press the Advantage, Counter Energy, Radiant Orbs, Galvanic Armor, Transference, and then Shield Crush. Not really special here. The main ones that matter are Galvanic Armor and then these two at the end. Galvanic Armor gives it that 30% damage resistance that we're basically always going to have once we're amplified. And these just are going to give us fast regen on our grenades. And also let us spam Transcendence so we can spam abilities while flying up in the air while also having more damage resistance. So always pop Transcendence if you have it. It just makes the whole thing about flying up in the air even easier. But that's gonna be the whole build. Is definitely different. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen a build with the Manticore yet, but now you have. Like always, I'm gonna leave a link in the description and in the comments in case you guys wanna give this build a try. It is definitely different. You're gonna have to definitely play differently, especially if you're not somebody who uses Ascension a lot. But it can be really good. Like the amount of stuff you can tank with this build, it is ridiculous, especially since you keep getting that overshield back as you're doing damage on like champions or big enemies, that it's crazy. I think where I really fell in love with this build was last week in the boss room. I was basically just standing right in front of the Tormentor, while he just kept hitting me over and over again, and I just kept tanking those shots. Just make sure that you keep an eye on your meter, because if your meter goes down and you're not ready for it, it can definitely catch you off guard, and you'll be surprised how fast you feel that damage. From falling from the sky to the ground, you'll definitely feel the difference, that's for sure. So, you know, as long as you keep an eye out on your meter and when you're gonna drop, you're gonna be ready for it. I also recommend that you focus on the ads first if there's a lot of ads around the area, since just shooting ads doesn't really drain the meter like that much, so you can actually stay up in the air for a really long time and then deal with the big guys last, since they tend to drain the meter a lot faster, although they also give you a lot of overshield when you're shooting at them. So definitely keep that in mind while playing with the build, or it might seem that you're like barely getting any airtime, but you definitely have to go and focus on mats and then focus the big guys. But I wish you luck with the build, and hopefully you guys like these different kinds of builds that are not like super meta, but still can perform in endgame content. But anyways, with that, we're gonna end today's video. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did, dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel in case you guys aren't already. If you guys do end up using the build, make sure you come back and tell me what you guys thought about it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.